And 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Put your hands. Hello, Nomadlanders and Nomadlandies. Welcome to your home. Welcome to my home. We're happy for you to tuning into us for another episode. We're hoping to have something beautiful and special for you this evening. It is Friday, Orange County, California. We got the legendary producer Cash in the house.
I'm here.
The sex symbol, the rapping sensation, Erfan.
Sure, man. I'll take your word for it. But we have a very special guest today. We have Professor Nooshin Valizadeh. She's a professor at USC, faculty member for the Center of Education, Identity, and Social Justice. She's also an artist, which makes it very cool. In my heart, at least, a special place because you do the music too on the side. And we've known each other for over 25 years. No, I'm kidding. We just met. We just met about 2 weeks ago online, actually. And it's very funny because me and you talked the day before. We're like, we need somebody, and I think it's good to talk about social justice and a lot of stuff out there that we want to talk about. And she was the perfect candidate. We just talked online, and here we are.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. That was a really sweet welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, feel free to introduce yourself however you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah,
sell it, girl.
What am I selling? Okay, so the movement. So I am a faculty member at the Rossier School of Education at USC, and I'm also an activist for feminism and intersectionality, mainly with sexual and domestic violence.
Violence.
So yeah. So
I just heard sexual, violence. Okay, that's not good. Okay,
no, that's
good.
Not, right. So I'm a board member for Peace Over Violence, and it was really cool that last night I got to go to a special event with my daughter. That was it was a Dia de los Muertos event. And
okay,
it was,
the Mexican holiday.
Right, and so it was in honor of women and trans folks and anyone who has been killed due to domestic violence. So I was able to actually go to an event that I could take my daughter to and celebrate.
So you're a full-time professor at USC?
So I teach 5 courses, which makes
what are they?
Really intense. I'm teaching 5 courses in the fall. They are communities courses, social justice, politics. But in the summer I taught finance for doctorate students. So I mainly teach master's and doctorate students in anything from finance and higher ed, social justice,
So
politics.
social justice is your main passion, I would imagine.
Yes. The name of the course is called different things, but within that, what I bring is social justice.
So I usually don't do this, but to me, this would be the most important question I would like to ask you today. So I'm going to start off with that. Why are these college kids so sensitive? Why do they lack tolerance? What's going on?
Yeah.
The college kids. Explain. What do you mean?
You don't see it? You don't
I don't
see
know
how
what
they're
you're
walking on eggshells and how they're so afraid of talking to each other? How afraid they are of expressing themselves in fear of offending each other to the point that they're keeping everything in? You say the wrong thing, you're a sexist. You say the other thing, you're anti-feminist. You say the other thing, you're racist. You're a transphobe. So it's to the point that it worries me of where we're heading in terms of discussion, the freedom of expression, and the threat to First Amendment.
Yeah, very easy to get labeled.
So first of all, do you not see that?
Well, I teach grad students more. So what I see with what you're talking about is different kinds of coursework and curriculum that is being facilitated by myself in a way that actually creates these conversations and has the delivery of these conversations and these issues in a productive manner. What I think you're maybe referring to is college students being in environments where they might feel marginalized and they don't really have access to the role models or the right kinds of peer and alumni and mentors to help them through while they're creating and forming their identity.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying they're afraid of talking to each other.
Okay.
They're afraid of saying the wrong thing.
Okay.
And for that reason, they don't open up and they're keeping things inside.
So
which is
you're
leading to a lot of...
People are being too conscious of being politically correct. And
absolutely.
Okay, that's what you're saying. So, so then that's a different thing. So, I guess what you're talking about with being concerned about being politically correct is not the direction that we're trying to go, because that is not what's at the core of the issue. The issues are not you shouldn't be saying these things because you need to try and be politically correct, because the politically correct police are going to come after you and tell you this was inappropriate, you're a bad person for this and that. It's kind of like seeing the problems that are coming from a root that hasn't been worked on yet. The root of the issues are that the kind of language that has been a psychological tool used to create disparities with people has been loosely used to the point where people are saying, hey, when you say something like whore as a joke, like these girls are just whores, oh, like we could all laugh, except that that's an easy thing to call a woman who was sexually assaulted. That's an easy thing to call a girl who doesn't agree with your opinions. Well, she's just a whore. A girl who rejected you. We can just say these terms, but at the end of the day, we have women who are still called whores, to be just further disenfranchised, to be, you know, for men to be able to get away with the kinds of things they do. So when you see the ramifications of that are happening, or where people are at right now, where you see, let's say, saying the wrong thing that comes off racist, well, we have race issues that haven't been addressed. So because these issues haven't been addressed, people are a little bit upset. They're angry, they are very triggered, and so it kind of has gotten to the point where it's like, screw you, you can't say things like that.
Well, I don't know. I think part of it is a lot of people want to do good, or like they would say the social justice warrior thing is like really big right now on the internet, and because they want to be part of it and they want to be, you know, they want to participate, they want to be part of the movement, they want to do good, so they're just looking for anything, and a lot of stuff, it just doesn't fit, you know. A lot of things that people are sensitive about, or, you know, get offended by, it's not a real thing, you know. And we kind of briefly touched on this when we were talking about this cultural appropriation thing. A lot of times it's due and it's the right thing, and a lot of times it's just they're being overly sensitive, and it, you know, the person's not being racist, or, you know, you shouldn't be offended of what they say, although you can't control that.
That's right. It seems like there's zero tolerance for hearing the opposing idea, because there's potentially too much of calling someone either oppressor, labeling white privilege, white supremacist. There's all these titles that they're giving, and they automatically put them in a box, and they don't want to hear what they have to say. So I feel like there's no room for dialogue, which is one of the most beautiful things about our country, is the fact that we were able to at least have a dialogue. And through that First Amendment, which is a mechanism, not a value, we're able to talk to each other and grow as a result. But now we're afraid of talking to each other. And I'm worried about the outcome of such scenario.
Well, you mentioned the both sides and things like that in the dialogue, but there's just been a dominant voice with a lot of these dialogues. So it seems to me that, who's been doing this work for many years, it seems to me that the second the dominant dialogue is no longer, or is still maybe the dominant dialogue and the representation we see with the media, with our laws, with our different systems, the second that there's an additional voice coming in, then there's a problem. So it's like, I should have the right to say what I feel like saying it, but when the other person is offended, they don't have the right to say anything. That's when it's a problem now. Suddenly it's like, oh, I should be able to say what I want to say, but you shouldn't have the right to be offended and speak out against it or call me out on it, because that makes me feel bad, and that makes me feel like you're labeling me as the racist and the oppressor. It's like, if I do something that actually physically hurts you by accident, like my intentions weren't there, right? And you're like, oh wow, my toe is broken, now I can't go play, you know, whatever sport you were gonna play. For me to sit there and spend all my time telling you about how I didn't mean to do that, and it wasn't my intention, and like, now you're consoling me for what I did, that's the problem. It's like, obviously I didn't mean to do it, obviously my intentions weren't there, maybe I was careless, maybe I was reckless. The impact is that now you can't go play the sport that you were supposed to play, or whatever, you know, the impact is still a problem. So the right thing, in my opinion, that I've seen really work is for me to just swallow my issues and say, hey, I'm really sorry that happened.
I mean, I don't think anybody should swallow the issue. I think that's actually part of it. And when let's say like a white supremacist wants to come and talk on campus, of course you have the right to protest, and you probably should, you're against it. But when they try to shut people down completely and they don't let people talk, that actually has adverse effects. And I've seen that happen in other places, because actually if the dialogue is open and both people get to say their sides, people aren't stupid. You know, you got to listen to it, and then you can make a better judgment.
And that's one of the things the social justice warriors are doing.
Yeah. If you shut someone down completely, you don't let him talk. Oh, they're not letting this guy talk. He might be onto something. And then what happens is that it goes really underground, and you see all these like crazy right-wing, like racist people right now growing in the country because the dialogue isn't there, you know, because if two people get to debate, you know, obviously you have a mind and you know who's right, who's wrong.
And can I add to that?
Yeah.
I believe why Trump happened is the result of that. I believe that we started labeling people racist. We started labeling them white privilege. We started not considering their thoughts and opinions to the point where something got boiled up inside them. And they just kept it all in. They kept it all in. And we started shaming white people. We started giving them so much guilt to the point that they looked for the first person that was willing to stand up for them. And as a result, they found Trump. You know, I think it's horrible to call those people racist. It's horrible for them to, for us to label them things because no, they're also people. They're not all racist. Not every Trump supporter is a racist. You know, they also believe in love. They also go to church. They believe in God. They believe in empathy and sympathy. But we've just disregarded them for far too long. And I think it starts from the college campuses, in my opinion.
You don't think those people were racist originally? You think we're bringing the racism, us calling them racist made them racist?
I'll put it this way. Let's say me as an Iranian American, right?
Yeah.
When I keep getting labeled terrorist, I'm not a terrorist, right? I'm not going to become a terrorist just because people call me that. But I feel like there's a lot of racism towards me, and I feel like I'm not being accepted. And it's something that I went through at some point after September 11th because of, you know, multiple things that I'm not going to get into. And that takes away from you feeling the same with everybody else and being part of the country in that sense. Not that Trump doesn't have racist supporters, you know, but it's just that you can't say that every single Trump supporter is half of the country. You know?
And I want to answer a question because she directly asked me. What I have to say to that is, do I think they're a racist? Do I think they have some flaws? See, that's the smaller question. I think the bigger question is for them to have the ability to express themselves. I believe that chaos and order
is a ladder.
Go hand in hand. It's the yin and the yang. It's the heaven and hell. It's the good and the bad. We need that chaos and order. We need that. Philosophy says that. Spirituality says that. Religion says that. And them allowing them to speak and being racist and us listening to them and not shutting them down will at least allow us to have a dialogue where something can grow out of that. But if we're going to shut them down and call them white privilege, racist, supremacist, where's the dialogue in that? Where's the growth in that? One more thing before you say what you have to say, and I'm sorry, is we need to find a space in our heart to be able to love them too, despite their racism, despite whatever they may have. Because if we allow to have that level of empathy is when we're going to be able to have a breakthrough of discussion. If we're going to automatically shut them down, then how are we ever going to be able to have the chance to grow? I think the dark is as necessary as the white. That's in my opinion.
Yeah, so I really like the last thing you said about how we need to, you know, embrace them with some sort of love to be able to create any kind of change. That actually is a lot of what my approach to teaching has been from James Baldwin. He wrote a letter to his nephew on the 100th anniversary of emancipation. So in there he talks about, he says, now this is again in the 60s, so things have changed, but or not, but but he does say, you know, you cannot go at it with hatred. He says things like, the system they placed you in the ghetto so you'd perish. They made it so that you wouldn't be able to write your own name. Like, they created these situations and told you you're a worthless human being, but you can't hate them for it, because what he says specifically about white people, he said they're also trapped in a history that they themselves don't understand, and until they understand it, they can't be free from it.
Thank you.
So what I look at, I don't sit there and think, oh, now that we're actually calling out white privilege, which exists, we're calling out racist, which exists. And you have to think, this history, a lot of what I teach is the real history of America. What I think you should learn when you're 7 years old that we haven't learned. I didn't even learn like until I got older. So I teach about the roots of this country. And once you understand the roots of this country and you understand what really happened, it makes sense that those people, they kept procreating. It's not like these people who did the most horrendous things to slaves went and didn't have children or had children and those children weren't hateful. They procreated and they kept their ideologies and they passed them on. And now we just had someone who was a great businessman who tapped into a niche market that was hiding or that was remote or that was unexposed, and he brought him out and said, bring him out. And it's like, and that's really what I see that he motivated. And so for us, people who've been doing this work, who have known this stuff has been working.
Let it flow.
No, I'm just gonna start dancing. No. People who have known this stuff for a long time are able to, now we're like, we know where you are, we know who you are, we always knew you existed, now everybody else knows you exist. And a lot of it, to me, from what I see, has been a lack of awareness, a lack of proper education. It's being, I mean, even like the Texas Board of Education, they were removing any mention of slavery from their books. So that means that my kids can go to college with kids who are educated, who don't even understand slavery. There's a lot of debate about the Civil War that didn't have to. There's incorrect. This is again the dominant conversation that happens in certain neighborhoods, certain areas, certain families where people just are unaware. They don't know why they hate certain people. They don't understand that they're actually like the people that you're talking about. So many of the Trump supporters who might be poor, who might also have, from different, they're also extremely oppressed as well by the same people we're talking about. They just are unaware. They don't know their own history. They don't know the situation. They don't really have access.
So shouldn't we reach out to them?
Shouldn't
we be able to bring them closer, hug them, find a way to love them, rather than calling them supremacists, rather than calling them white privilege, rather than pointing out at the color of their skin, and through the language of microaggression? Through the language of all over sensitivity. As a matter of fact, I feel like we need to toughen up our skin and find the space in our heart to love, rather than finding ways to point fingers.
Well, toughening up skin, you're victim blaming. You are actually saying that it's people's issues to be offended and to be triggered. And that's what we try and do is protect our students, because we do so much research and studies on how badly marginalized students are affected in their successes compared to their privileged students who don't even necessarily have to be white. It could be male, it could be, whatever. And so we do a lot of research and studies. So when we don't want hateful speech and things like that on our campuses, we're protecting our students who need to have that kind of support space where they're forming their identity so that they don't get damaged and they don't drop out and they don't get traumatized. I can't just, even in my class where we talk about these heavy issues, I don't show up to class and show police brutality videos and just throw the rape term around, because I know that certain students, I have to give trigger warnings. It's not about being sensitive. It's about, these are true traumas that this student might have 3 days that they can't get out of bed because of this conversation.
No, definitely. No, no, that should happen. When someone's out of line, when someone is spreading hate, you should protest it. But I'm just saying, a lot of times on campuses, people get violent. And look at what Martin Luther King did, Gandhi, all these people, and they never backed down on anything, right? They stood their ground. They had something that they believed in, and they followed through. But they didn't get violent and just punch people and do that kind of stuff in the protests. Have peaceful protests, say what you have to say. And I do think that people like you, or students in any campus, when someone comes and is spreading hate, white supremacy, that should be dealt with, and people should stand up and say, we don't want these people on our campus, and protest. But again, for me, it just always goes back to the dialogue and how important it is to have that dialogue and have the open dialogue and
the tolerance.
The
I will
tolerance.
say that Martin Luther King did say that riots are the voice of the unheard.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people, a lot of people are fed up, where I'm not saying that the violence should happen and that's how we need to, speak out and we have to go that route, but it is understood, right? That is kind of how it's like, you will hear us now, because we are fed up, because we are tired of even things like with Black Lives Matter. It's not just about police brutality. It's about the disenfranchisement that happens in certain communities. It has to do with mass incarceration. It also has to do with, schools and education and books and parks and things like that take place. And just to go, so when you said, I really like that you said, shouldn't we be going with those people? So a lot of people, they're like, oh, you teach these like uncomfortable topics in class and your students like it. And they think that most of my students, they're all students who are race and ethnicity majors who are like, yes, I can't wait for you to talk about these things that I want to talk about. I teach at USC. We have a spectrum of students. And the reason why I'm able to do what I do well is because I'm able to reach the whole spectrum of students. So I have students who are from very wealthy neighborhoods, students from the Midwest, students who have never really been exposed to these issues. And because of the way that I make sure I facilitate the dialogue, and first is creating the community first, which is actually the first course I teach. It's building communities. We build a community, we create love to the point where I had students, we had to stay an extra hour because of like so many things that had happened that day in class. And I told the students they could leave as there were different presentations going, and pretty much every student stayed, and they stayed back for their students. So something I hear a lot from my students who are white, who are from Midwest, is things like, I don't know who I was 4 months ago, and I don't want to know that person. And that to me is the change, because yes, I love being able to show a sense of belonging to my students who are minoritized, marginalized, students who live in LA. But to have students who are going to go back to places I would never go, like, I don't want to name states, I don't want to put anything down, but just areas that I wouldn't necessarily
South Carolina. North Carolina.
I lived in North Carolina,
West Virginia.
More like to go to places that I might just go for a wedding and peace out. Like to go to those are the people who are going to go and talk to their communities. They're the ones
saying the same thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
So there is a way to be sensitive and to be hyper aware and knowledgeable. Those same students wouldn't sit there and be like, it's not a big deal that you want to dress like a Native American. Those students would be like, this is a problem. Yet they're not going to see it as attacking because they already have relationships built with these communities that if I went talking to them, just like when I do sexual assault conversations, I say to the men, I say, it is not my job to go around educating men about women's issues. It is your job now. You go talk to men about it, because I'm still going to be the girl who's talking about this and that. I'm going to be the one who's playing the victim, or I'm going to be like, give us better jobs in leadership. You need to advocate. You tell your men not to rape. You tell your boys not to like have these.
I tell my boys all the time, don't rape.
You better.
But no, but what she said is
y'all fellas need to stop raping and shit.
I'm not the person I was 4 months ago. I don't rape anymore. No, but what you said about what you said about the student saying that
4 months ago.
What you said about the student said that I'm not the same person 4 months ago. That's beautiful. How did that happen? That happened through dialogue and teaching and learning and communication, right?
I had her for a while. We built rapport. I didn't. So a lot of times in the beginning, you have students who are really excited. They want to talk about these issues because they're experiencing it. And they're like, finally. It's like when I grew up in Massachusetts, and I would look, the first thing I would do in a history book is look to the back and be like, are they going to talk about Persia? Are they going to talk about Iran? Never. If I ever had a class where I was like, finally, we're going to talk about real Persian history. Finally, we're going to talk about Iran. I'd be amped up. So I have those students who are like, I can't wait to have these conversations. And I'm like, yes, we are going to have them, but we also have to be patient, because that student, for example, if I went too hard in areas that she hasn't been able to access because of our housing segregation laws, because of all of the different, things that have happened because of, the cultural hegemony and the positioning of our systems that have made it so the student didn't have access, her privilege, whatever it is, she didn't have access to these conversations. I want to give her that access. If I push her too early, then she's going to disengage, and I won't have her by the end of the year. Instead, I'm patient. I'm going to have one-on-ones. You better still be engaged in some way. You don't have to speak and talk about things you don't know about just yet right away, but you're going to get there, and I will work with you so that like 3-4 months down the line, you're going to be able to like be in that position. You can see the effect. So so I like worked with her one-on-one. I encouraged her. I told her, hey, if you don't know about this, refer to the text. Read more. Here's some extra articles that maybe like a lot of your peers would have knowledge about that you need to read about and learn about. Let's talk about it. Let's practice how you're going to have this conversation. And I'm not saying that's something every faculty member can do, but that's something that I really have the time to do.
Do you think other faculty members are that open to step outside their comfort zone, to be that tolerant and to be that understanding and loving?
I think there are many who can. I think there are different issues that come about. There's certain faculty members who might just have much more severe requirements of them that I don't have yet because I'm new and
Sure.
and I don't have like a ton of other responsibilities that I have to like bring in for the university.
You're not corrupted yet.
No, that's not what I say.
Kidding,
But I
totally.
also think that these are conversations that not every faculty member necessarily
Right.
is able to facilitate properly.
Right.
And that, you know, that's something about universities maybe needing to have some professional development and training more faculty to be able to facilitate these conversations in small group settings. Give them money, you know? I mean, no,
Yeah.
every faculty member is not going to sit there and I have my students write me a log every day, every class at the end to tell me like what they felt, and I get to read them and I respond to them.
Every class?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
I'm very anal. And I'm like, I need to know because I'm learning. I mean, teaching is really because I like to learn.
So you don't ever let them leave early. You're one of those.
They don't want to. They like staying.
Sure.
No, I tell them
You
that they
believe that.
can write me later because sometimes you need to process.
All right.
So I'm like, you can write it later, but I want to know, and it can be anonymous too. Like, so a lot of times it's an anonymous thing, and then it's like a question that they want me to. I'm like,
Yeah.
do I answer in class? Like, you didn't tell me who you are. But
Just slide through the DMs.
but yeah, so that they feel that sense of like safety and
Right.
community there.
That's important.
Yeah, so I feel like, you know, not everyone has that ability to do that, so that's been like my niche.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess if I wanted to make a point, maybe if we talk more about the cultural appropriation, we can make some better points. But what I'm saying is that obviously you have to fight it, you know, and I think I totally believe that every single person has to fight what they believe in and be against what they think is bad and evil, right? But we have to fight the big battles, you know, and some things, when I think when he talks about being sensitive, some things, it's not a real battle out there and it's not an issue, but they're making issues out of it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with cultural
I know what you're
appropriation, a lot of them are appropriate, like, you know, wearing Native American outfits for Halloween, right? I mean, that's disrespectful. But I saw something
Well,
about
to you, a lot of people would say, what's the big deal? Pocahontas.
Yeah.
Who cares, you know? So, yeah. But
Well, I mean, they're not all wearing Pocahontas outfits, but with the hair stuff, I don't get that. You know, like
Okay,
we'll
what do
say
you
sometimes African Americans get mad at people wearing braids or dreadlocks, and first of all, it's not even if you look into the history of it, it's not necessarily an African American thing. It's not a black thing. There's in the Greek times, Roman times, people had dreadlocks, people had braided hair, Vikings had it, you know what I mean? And to me, if someone does something like that for my culture, I think I'll be flattered, you know? I don't think that's stealing from the culture. But there are things that are offensive. Like, let's say you watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon in the 50s, and the way they're portraying the Japanese person is freaking crazy racist, and you can't believe that was in a children's cartoon, right? So, I mean, I know you know a lot about the subject, so I want to kind of talk about that.
I mean, you brought up black hair, which is a very touchy conversation to
Sure.
have. So, do you want to? If you want to go there, we can go there.
yeah, no, let's talk about it. I mean, I'm here to learn too. Maybe you say something that like
So-
justifies it in my head.
Okay, well, I mean, I know a lot of different things about locks, and like Rastafarianism and things like that. And I know like the Dervishes in our culture had that. So, I know an example would be like Marc Jacobs.
Sure.
I think it was him. He had, I think it was Marc Jacobs had a runway show, and he was very like stood by it.
Sure.
A lot of the issue is that a lot of his models were rocking, his European models were wearing what would be considered black hairstyles.
Sure.
And they were wearing what would be considered black hairstyles, and there was a problem because of the fact that so much of our society has really conditioned people to think that black hair is not appropriate. Even in South Africa, women are not able to, in certain schools, wear their natural hair out. It's seen there have been so many terms, nappy, ghetto, things like that that have created a society where having chemicals in your hair and having extensions that are going to make you look like less.
Okay, so I mean, I
Afrocentric.
guess I'm a little confused
things
here.
like that ends up
Sure,
ends up
but that
being
should
a
be dealt
problem.
with. And, you know, people should be able to in school. I mean, in South Africa, if that's an issue. I don't know about the Marc Jacobs thing specifically.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, so a lot of it's less. I mean, black guys even in the 80s and stuff, you know, they used to strain their hair. I mean, even back, you know,
Right.
a lot of artists. And to this day, a lot of black girls
Cash wore a fro for Halloween 2 days ago.
straight hair, right? I mean, they wear wigs and stuff like that, or
Who
they
does?
strain their hair. People who have curly hair. I mean, not necessarily
Right,
just
right.
black people.
Yeah,
anyway,
yeah.
right?
Right.
And then at the same time, so it's not bad to do that. And if it's something outside of that, again, because first of all, it's not a black thing. The dreads and braids are not a black thing necessarily, right? A lot of ancient cultures were doing it, and today, if I'm doing it, like most of my idols are black, right?
But who's doing it today that you're saying it's a problem when white people do it? Because it's not their culture.
I don't think that's what I'm saying. Like white people, like Vikings used to have dreads, and like a lot of people historically, and then a lot of I mean, if you don't wash your hair, it turns to dreads eventually. But what I'm saying is, I don't think just if you like someone's look, and you take that again, like for me, I'm using myself as an example. A lot of the people that I looked up to in life, and I still do, from childhood, were black. You know, most of my idols are black. You know, I'm a rapper. I loved hip hop, and I really looked up and I learned a lot. You know, so I mean, if I kind of like that look and I want to do it, that means I'm stealing or I'm like out of place because I like to have dreads, or it's just I don't get that.
There are certain times when it can be like a cultural invitation or
Sure.
a cultural exchange, and there's also different time dynamics that take place. So, for example, I also love hip hop, and all of my college pictures, I have cornrows actually
Sure.
back then. So, and I never had someone say anything to me about it then. I was on BSU, and I felt like, okay, well, my friends, they know what to do with curly hair. I didn't know what to do with it. It's very humid in Boston, so they always braided my hair. I never had a problem. Would I do that today? Absolutely not, because
Sure.
it means something different today. Today, when you have African Americans who have these hairstyles, that when they have those hairstyles, they're looked at as being a certain way. They're followed around in stores. They're arrested. They're murdered at times for certain looks.
Well, not by everybody. Obviously, if everybody thought that way, then white people wouldn't be getting braids.
But when white
I'm not
people-
buying that.
I don't-
when
think
white
people-
people
Black
take
girls
it
come to
up
me and
things-
like, hey, baby, can I braid your hair? I'm like, no, how dare you? I can't do that. You know what I mean? Like, why would I?
Yeah, I just I said something in the workplace. I mean, I did see something online about people, black women in the workplace. Sometimes when they want to do certain hairstyles, they're not allowed to do it. You know, and they might get fired or not hired in the first place. But Kylie Jenner does it, and she could do it. For Kylie Jenner's not working at that place. That's not a good example. You know what I mean? If I, as an Iranian American, any white person would do it at the workplace, would get dreads, they wouldn't get hired either. You know, or if any, I mean, yeah.
But that's something that you're saying having braids, like that's a way that's not being hired in the workplace or being fired for having your natural hair. That is their natural hair. That is saying that is part of what the supremacy is about, is saying this is the norm. This is the way to be. You aren't professional unless you are whiter, unless your hair is whiter.
Okay, I can fuck with that. That should be dealt with.
So
yeah, that's
not
right. Okay.
So when you have, like, let's say a white girl who, when she does it, it's now cute and trendy. That we also have a history. You have to look at the history. So cultural appropriation, when you're taking things from other cultures, either intellectual things, sacred things, community things from other cultures without any regard or respect for those people or those communities, and these are not parts that you're actually integrated with at all through the arts, through community, through friendships, or anything, that's when it becomes a problem. And it's not that, oh, those people get sensitive, it's that you're actually being extremely you're falling into colonialism in that regard, where it's a habit of, and historical oppressions, where it's a habit of, I like these pieces of you, but I don't like all of you. So I'm going to take all these cool things I like about black culture, which is going to be hip hop, and it's going to be the braids, and it's going to be certain kind of clothing. But wait a minute, when we're talking about Black Lives Matter, or we're talking about police brutality, or we talk about black trans folks being murdered just for existing, really, or having no jobs, that's not really my issue. That's like their thing now, and that's the problem. It's like, so people will say, if y'all aren't going to be with us, then you can't have these fun things as a costume.
And that's exactly how they say it, right? Y'all.
No, that's not.
No.
That's a bit insensitive.
Yeah, I know.
That's
No. I'm saying a lot of things.
all of us can say that. I would say that about some.
I don't have to go back to the 80s to think about that. I've dealt with that in this past 2 decades in this country. So what I'm saying is, I'm just saying things. My whole point was that you have to separate one thing from another, right? So to me, the hair thing, I can't accept that, to be honest. About the other side of it, if someone has the natural hair and they can't wear it, that's fucking bullshit, of course. But if anybody from any other race wants to braid their hairs, I don't think black people should be offended, you know.
But how can you say what a race should and shouldn't be offended by?
I shouldn't be, as a Persian, offended if someone wants to use something that's Persian.
But Persians
and
don't
design.
have the same. The Persians don't have this. We're a well-to-do minority here. We do well. We don't have.
To me, it's not a thing here. It's a global thing. It's a global thing to me. It's not like just like living in America.
Hold on, but I mean, you can't just say that. I mean, who are you, like the representative for Persian people?
Right.
What if there are Persian people that are in a place that they don't feel the way you feel? But see, the problem, my problem is, and all of a sudden people feel like they have the authority to be the spokesperson for a certain group. And I don't feel like that's
no, that's tokenizing. We shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But what I'm telling you is be aware of the fact that the black hairstyles that white people replicate that we see are cute or sexy or trendy are the same hairstyles that black people in their communities wear that police will stop a 7-year-old and say that they're like, they have bad parenting or they're hood rat and things like that are subjecting and make that kid think that they can't be anything, make that kid maybe not, progress, or make that community in a position where they're like gonna have an issue with police and things like that.
You think they wouldn't arrest them or pull them over if that's straight hair? Like if they didn't have?
I'm not saying, if they didn't have their hair, they wouldn't. What I'm saying is the lens that we look at white people doing things is an edgy, fun, like trendy lens, and it's not the same lens that we see people of color when they're doing things that are just.
No, the hair thing again, something that's deeply cultural, and it gets taken advantage of. I get that. What I'm saying is like, again, if you look into the history of it, dreads and braids, historically, it's not only a black thing. That's what I'm saying. Okay, right?
But are white people who are doing it, are they trying to connect to their Viking side, or are they borrowing it from? I'm asking.
They like the look. These white people who wear dreads are not the same people who make the rules about the black people not being allowed to wear the hairstyles in the workplace. No, you're saying there are rules, right? In the workplace,
about
they're not allowed to.
Things like
so it's not the same people. The guy who made those rules is not the guy who likes to wear dreads and he looks up and has black idols in their lives. That's what I'm saying. But
so let's kind of close this little segment. So I just want to say to that is that I feel like shaming those people that do what you're against or what a lot of people are against is not the right way to do it. Maybe educating or talking about the things. What just happened over there?
Yeah. Okay. So who's shaming them?
Whoever's trying to make them feel super guilty for something. Okay. Yeah. I don't think most of them are doing it with a bad intention in their heart. So the answer to that is education, not pointing fingers at them and saying, how dare you, and look at you, white boy, with that. That's not the language. The language that must be used is the language of love and education and patience and understanding and compassion and empathy. And we're not doing that, and that is my problem. That's it. Otherwise, I'm not saying anything that you're saying in that regard is wrong. Actually, fundamentally, I think that's beautiful because you're actually being sensitive to somebody that doesn't look like you. But the way we go about it is where my problem lies.
Yeah. And so for me to clarify, I want to just clarify.
Let's just clarify each other the whole thing.
Yeah. Just to clarify, you're right. I'm in no place to say what a black anybody from any other culture or race should feel or not get offended by. I can't. But and I think there's a lot of things that people should be offended. What I was pointing out is that there are some things that don't make sense to me and to a lot of people, and there's things that do make sense. And if you're taking, like on Taco Tuesday, where you're wearing like a sombrero going into a freaking restaurant, that could be offensive. Or if you're doing something Indian for Halloween or something like that, I could see that being offensive, But I saw something about hoop earrings being cultural appropriation, like Latinas don't like it when white girls wear it. Or Jeremy Lin, NBA player, he had dreads, and Kenyon Martin, he's like, made fun of and talked shit about him for doing it, and he turned back around and said, his response was great. Jeremy Lin said that, I'm something in the lines that I'm going to totally mess this up, but I understand, growing up, I really looked up to you. I have posters of you on my wall, and I understand that you might not like it, but this is just a hairstyle that I like, and and you have Chinese tattoos, so someone who has Chinese tattoos and comes and says like that, so. Anyway.
Well, if I could just add to that one thing.
Summarize.
No.
No. I want to hear it.
No. The thing is, and that's what I do for work. I'm I teach about these things and I facilitate the conversations and I do workshops where we do that. I'm not the police. I don't write articles banning things. I might one day, but at this point, that's not what I'm doing. I might just be tired of students and do that. I don't think so. I love them so much. But that's what I do is to have, and again, the community is important. What's happening is people don't have enough exposure and engagement with other cultures and other races to hear those voices. Because the one thing is, it's not even about, oh, you shouldn't feel this, you should feel that. It's like, if you actually have relationships with enough, for example, I've always had relationships with people from African American descent, Caribbean, Black. So just growing up in a town where I wasn't very accepted, that's the community that I became American with. It happened to be an African American community.
Yeah, me too.
I have enough,
just relate more. It's natural.
So it's like I have enough interactions, and then you have to have had these kinds of conversations, and that's why college is a great place, because you are pushed to have these conversations where you hear so many different voices and you gain a new perspective of it, as opposed to just your own and an article you read. It's like I'm actually building relationships and friendships and a community with people where now that I've heard what everyone else, it could be even a book
A
that
diverse
someone,
community.
yeah, it could even be a book that I have some students who come in a class and they're like, this book was awesome, I loved it. Then they hear other students who are like, I didn't like it. This didn't talk about this group, and this group felt isolated. That same story, I'm like, you can still like the book, but you need to understand now that there are maybe some limitations that you didn't think of now, instead of being like, well, I can still like this and it's my book. Like, then you're just being, you're having cognitive dissonance.
Yes,
you're
yes.
not
You're
allowing.
creating the space for that to happen, which is a beautiful thing, and it's essentially what we're saying. But I just don't feel like that's happening on a larger level, in my opinion. You know, and I think the way we go about it is the wrong way. You know, you're saying, according to you, you're creating a space, a community where people come with opposing thoughts and they have tolerance. And fuck, I mean, everybody needs to do that. You know, now if you're saying that it's happening all around college campuses for the most part, then maybe we could disagree on that.
If it was, then I wouldn't have to teach certain classes. I'm just kidding. But it's like, yeah, there were more people who were facilitating.
Because I see professors
communities.
like Jordan Peterson, you know, that's trying to say something completely rational and just saying what, and pretty much protecting the oppressed, and the oppressed is the one that's speaking against them and blowing ear horns right up his face and a whole bunch of other
Why
stuff.
are you quoting the oppressed though? Like they're not really oppressed. You're like the oppressed.
In the context of what's happening in the Jordan Peterson scenario,
Okay.
right? I would do that for the oppressor and the oppressed. You know, and that's to me that's a victim mentality that we can talk about that too in regards to the whole glorifying of the white privilege. I agree that systematically it's been very damaging to the minorities, especially the black people. But I feel like there's too much emphasis on that, and there should be a balance between talking about white privilege and a sense of empowering the people that are minorities. When I read cultural diversity books, I don't find anything in terms of the strength that allowed the black people to rise, or any minority group. There is none of that. All there is white privilege, supremacist, you know, and how you've been oppressed, and now watch out for that. There's no beauty in it. To me, and this is not my quote, but, you know, I think there's privilege in being black too. And,
Of course.
And we need to talk about that. You know, black soul, that's privilege. You know, there's a lot of other things that minorities have that white people they may not have. And we need to emphasize on that, and we need to talk about that too. There needs to be a balance.
Well, a lot of that is, again, education, where you have a lot of teachers who go into these schools that are predominantly black or predominantly Latinx, and they are not even aware, never mind educated and deeply understanding of black history. How can you teach black children when you didn't study black history? What are you teaching them? To be like you? You know, and that's the problem. And if you like hip hop, so Dead Prez, Base Schools, that's a song that really hit me, because when I was in 8th grade, I did call my teacher a racist. And then years later, I hear the song, and he's like, I called her racist because, you know, and it's like, and he that song really goes into how, like, they were teaching me the wrong thing about my people, and they weren't actually engaging. So then I was like, I believe in education, but if education's just teaching me, not elevating me, then he's like,
but they're not talking about it in the books. They're not talking about the black beauty in the books. They're not talking about all the beautiful things
they have it in the
about those
books,
cultures.
But again, this is where the supremacy and the dominant cultural hegemony and like that dominant voice comes in. Are the principals, are the superintendents, are those people in power, are they representative of these minority communities so that they're pushing that these books are read and learned about and talked
What
about?
do you mean? In those books, they're talking about white privilege everywhere. They're talking about how
you're saying they're talking about white privilege, but not about the elevation.
They're not.
Well,
I'm saying there should be a balance in that. They should talk about the privilege that every culture has if we're talking about cultural diversity. Because diversity means the beauty and the ugly within every culture. Not just the ugly of one culture. And I feel like there's far too much of one thing and the other is not existent. Mm-hmm. Because I believe as human beings, we operate from a place of fear or we operate from a place of love. And fear is privilege this, racist that. Love is let's try to find a way to communicate and connect on a higher level. You know, and I believe that we need to connect to our higher levels in order to communicate, not on the lower level of ourselves.
I don't know which books you're talking about, but when I teach about white privilege, we talk about what it means, what different privileges mean for us. So what white privilege is, what male privilege is. We talk about cis privilege. And so I have my students do
what is that?
Cisgender privilege.
Oh,
so
okay.
like I have my students, write about finish the sentence. As a blank person, I don't know what it's like to live life as a blank person. So, for example, as a cisgender person, I don't know what it's like to live my life as a trans person. Okay. Right? So things like that. As a male, that kind of thing. And I have them do a privilege walk where you take a few steps forward, take a few steps back, and it's everything. It's really not about recognizing just white privilege. It's about different privileges. Like, one of the questions is, did you grow up with a lot of books in your house? I mean, you could have been poor and grown up with a lot of books. There's a privilege in that you'll see some students will move forward. Right. What you do tend to see when you do these walks is at the very front, it's going to be able-bodied, it's going to be white, it's going to be wealthy. That's what you're going to see at the front when you do this privilege walk.
Well, that's beautiful. And I just want to make one thing, I want to be vulnerable for a second, is that for the past few days, I've been having conversations with people with complete opposing thoughts. And now I'm entering into this session talking to you, and all of a sudden maybe I'm putting their faces on top of your head. Because as you're talking, we agree on a lot of things. Yeah, we may disagree about certain things, but overall I feel like we're really saying the same thing. And I feel like on an energy level, I'm coming at you as if you are saying exactly what they're saying. Maybe yes, maybe no. So I apologize if that's happening right now.
I mean, you came in full-blown attack. We were straight up ready to go. But I wasn't ready for that. But I apologize. But I'm an Iranian woman, so I'm ready for anything.
Iranian women are I'm kidding.
But I mean, as far as the racism thing, I mean, can we agree that Middle Easterns have had it the worst in the past, maybe?
We don't want to say worse. That's what we talk about, the oppression Olympics, where we're like, who's had it worse? Who's had it worse? Because that's the divide and conquer mentality. As long as we have black people and Hispanic people and Muslim people and gay people fighting each other, they're not going to look up and see who's really oppressing everyone and who's really kind of got their hands in the cookie jar. Yeah. So we don't want to do that. But if we talk about, what were you going to say?
No, I'm just saying that I've felt a lot of racism in the past 20 years, and I still do. In the workplace, I mean, not out in the city so much, and not so much as much as I used to. Maybe right after September 11th. I mean, I went to prison for being Iranian. I've dealt with a lot of stuff in my life, but I don't like to having that victim mentality because it just holds you back, Yeah. And if anything, if I need to do something about it. I need to make more connections. I need to make friends with more white people. I need to,
But you know what they say to that? Yeah. Now I'd say they. I won't say. You know what she would say to that?
You have so much bias against me. You didn't even know me. You didn't even try and get to know me before we came here. You're like, you are that person I was arguing with.
I apologize. I may have done that.
I accept your
And more than likely I have done that. I'll take responsibility.
I'm
human.
We're good.
But I felt like for the sake of the dialogue, that may have also been necessary, right?
Yeah.
Fucking, it's entertainment. Let's sell that shit.
I'm just happy I didn't get wasted and then have the conversation. I was able to keep my cool.
I'm sipping water, pretending that it's alcohol. What did I want to say? Oh, so what they would say to you in that regard is, well, that's you and good for you. Maybe you're strong enough, but systematically,
I'm not. I'm a weak motherfucker.
Systematically, you've been oppressed, and you need to understand that. That's what they say to you over and over, because I've heard it over and over. One more thing. If I can remember what I wanted to say. But not once would they say this. What did it take for you to get to this level of thinking where you have that internal strength and level of empowerment to feel the way you do? How do you navigate through that feeling oppression, transmuting it into beauty? They will never ask you that. They will say you're different, but systematically. And that's a victim mentality, in my opinion.
Well, I don't really like to even say victim or anything like that, because it's just
maybe
mentality. Yeah, I would say you don't have to be the person who feels oppressed to be part of a group that is oppressed. So for example, maybe someone will say, I don't have issues with, like, I'm doing great in my career and I don't find women's issue. And like, you're still part of an entire target identity that has like very minimal leadership position representation. So you don't have to personally feel that way.
No.
Your group still does, right?
But I was gonna say, I think just so it's not a misunderstanding. Yeah. I don't think that there's no oppression. I think there's plenty of oppression, and it's been, and I have felt it in my life more than the average Iranian American. I have plenty, but I don't want to let it hold me back in life.
Right. And good. It shouldn't. But it's not necessarily holding everybody back, but it is holding certain people from obtaining the things they need to do. But what you're pointing to is something how in our community you have had certain, like, I've never been to prison, I've had other things that have happened as an Iranian woman, and so in our community this is why in every community, any culture, and you have an international listeners here, social justice work is everybody's work, because in our community we have that diversity. Even if you were going to talk about like Shahs of Sunset, they have representation. I know it's funny, but like even that
let's talk about it. Yeah.
Even that show, you have Muslims and Jewish Iranians. Those are the two, like, in terms of numbers wise, Jewish people, anti-Jewish hate crimes are still the highest in America, and
what is it? Sorry, what was that?
And anti-Semitic hate crimes are like
against Jews
numbers wise. Numbers, it's still the most in America every year. In terms of Islamophobia, oh my gosh, the percentage has
according to what numbers?
A huge increase. Reporting of hate crimes, reports. Yeah, I mean the.
In what area? In just society in general,
in our country,
or in
school?
America,
like the whole country, there's more hate crimes you're saying against Jews than other. Okay.
And then
other
in
what?
Terms of
other religions,
anything,
or any other cultural group
that's been reported. That's
very interesting. I mean,
numbers wise, I have the there's
different reports.
You sure?
It's still anti-Semitic.
Okay.
Not the reports that I've read, and I've read a lot of peer review articles. But I mean, I agree with you that it could. It could be, no, I don't agree with that either. But I'm saying that I do understand they are on the bottom of the food chain in regards to hate and
in terms of reported hate crimes that are violent.
Right.
So and then and on college campuses, that's actually like the third biggest setting for hate crimes to happen. And Muslim anti-Islamic, that's been an increase just since January. The reports have been anywhere from 70-90% increase. So you have two of those representations on a show like Shahs of Sunset. You have another person who just had a child who is mixed race, so half black, and I have cousins who are Puerto Rican. So it's like we can't say, oh, these people are, so I can't sit there and say, oh, these conversations like my family's gonna have about like what it's like to be like Latinx person and Persian, but the rest of the Persians, they're just Persian in that community. It's like these are issues. We have LGBT, we have gay people on that show. So that show alone shows you how we have so much diversity within our country, within our community. Yeah. So that's how we have to have these conversations, because being in the LGBT community and being Iranian is a thing. Being in the LGBT community, being Iranian or being Asian, we have that diversity within our community. So this is everyone's work. We can't say, oh, you're half, Latino or half black or half Asian and Persian, but you're really Persian. You can speak our language with us. Like, no, you still might get pulled over and be discriminated against because, and that's going to be my issue, because you're my people. You're going to have, people say things. Maybe in California it's not as bad as other cities and states or countries where being gay is a problem, and I can't just say like, well, you're Persian, so since you're gay I care about you. No, now I really need to be educated and understand the LGBT community.
Yeah, I got you.
So like that.
You made great points, and I never looked at Shahs of Sunset through your lenses, and I have appreciation for that. I never considered that.
That's true.
And it's getting a lot of views. The ratings on that show is really good, actually. I mean, that's how they keep getting extended. So you make a great point
that I didn't see on Jersey Shore. So I get excited about the show.
It looks like you're following all those shows to reach a higher level of enlightenment.
I do watch a lot of Bravo. I'm not gonna lie.
No, I realized as an Iranian, I realized as an Iranian, I could be really biased because they're Iranian in certain things. But then I learned when I talked to friends from other cultures and American people, they're like, especially. One of my friends was saying that she was saying in Middle America, it's fascinating to them, to see like these Iranians and these lifestyles and what they're doing in LA, and it's so funny and stuff like that to them. When a lot of Iranians do watch it, we're like
the glam shots,
the hell,
the glam music.
But yeah.
So we're short on time. Should I bring up another controversial topic?
You're doing. I mean,
I want to bring something that maybe we can find.
I don't know why you're asking that.
Amber Rose Slut Walk. Do you like it or do you love it?
You know about that. Yeah. You've been involved with that. Yeah.
That's what you're hilarious.
I forgot about that.
You love pushing the envelope.
I look at it as a responsibility, you know, and you have to find a way to do it on a universal level.
It motivates me. I'm very excited right now because I love to argue. Okay. Well, what's interesting is that I was a speaker for the women's conference that was the day before. And
I'm a big fan, by the way.
What is she about to say?
Can you introduce me?
I just want to be so safe. Like, I don't want to, like, you know, but I'm like, all right, go.
Very excited.
I'm passionate.
So I did a women's.
What do you want me to do? Not look at you? This is your, like, mom's glasses.
Yeah, there we go. Right. Okay, so there was a women's conference that get this. It's a real amazing thing. It happened at USC with our Feminist Research Center and the Amber Rose Foundation. I brought a lot of women, very powerful women, to do different kinds of workshops and speaking engagements. And I was able to do one on financial literacy, social justice, and entrepreneurship, which was awesome. And then went to the Slut Walk the next day and had a lot of little talks and events there too. So the Amber Rose Slut Walk.
Can you explain it in simple words to people that don't know what Amber Rose Slut Walk is?
Oh, what it is?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not her,
and two sentences are better.
So I would say that it's really about women being. It's about like avoiding the whole slut shaming that does lead to, you know, things like her deserving being raped and sexual
like calling
assault
people
and
names sluts,
like
thoughts,
that.
whore.
Yeah, that leads to a lot of things that like makes it okay for men to get away with the things that they do.
But does it say it's okay to be a slut?
That's the point of it. Does she does say it's
what does that even
okay.
mean?
She says, let's take that word from what, and I don't want to like misinterpret what she said.
Right.
What I've learned from just seeing her and meeting her and hearing what she said that she's taking the word like slut and hoe, the way it's been used against them, and making it like our word that we can use and make it a good thing instead of such a negative connotation that puts women down and makes them deserving of crimes that are committed against them. That's what she's doing with that. And I know that it seems from the outside like, oh, this means that girls can go and
be sluts.
But what does being a slut mean?
Well, what does she say?
What has society decided that it means? I don't know. You'll have to look. You'll have to ask her exactly.
Because this is what I thought it meant. And correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't looked.
I participated in it, and it wasn't about let's go be like the stereotype. It was about let's empower women and have them in a space where we're empowering them, bringing them up, lifting them up, and not judging them for what they're wearing, what they look like, things like that.
Okay, and that may be a great part of it, right? And if it is that, then that's beautiful. Yeah. But if it's hey, let's be sluts because guys are sluts. Like, to me, I have a problem with that.
Let's be sluts?
Because it's okay for guys to be very sexually active, but when women do that, it's frowned upon.
That's a part of it. That's what some people had. And everyone had a different voice about what it meant.
So to that, like, I want to speak to that. What do you think about that?
If women want to be sexually free and be sex positive.
Yeah, what does it mean? I mean, to be a slut, does that mean just be you sleep with whoever you want? Is that what it is?
I guess.
Okay.
So that means you're a slut because you sleep with whoever you want?
No, I'm asking.
No, I'm just asking the meaning of the word.
I don't use the word slut.
Yeah.
I've never used the word
It's
slut.
not even cool, yeah.
It's not even like a thing that I've ever been like, oh, such a slut. Like, I'm not, I don't use female degrading terms. Even if like, honestly, if tomorrow, if I found out some girl was obsessed with my husband, I wouldn't be like, she's such a whore, she's such a slut. Like, I don't talk like that.
And I believe if it's in that context, that the biggest form of degrading a woman is to say that you need to be equal to man's worst behavior. That's what I'm worried about. I'm like, is there a message in there where it says because guys are misbehaving, so should we? I worry about that because there's so much beauty and the divine femininity of women and just who they are. Why should they bring themselves down to the male stereotype that could be potentially negative? As a matter of fact, we should find a way for guys to live up to their beauty, not for the woman to bring themselves down to the guy's ignorance.
No, I agree. I think, but the point would be that they could do whatever they want, right? But they shouldn't be labeled, like, called certain things.
No, I agree with that point. If that's the point.
Yeah, that's not the message I got from the conference I was involved with. In terms of the Slut Walk, there were like 20,000 people there. So I don't know what every single person is getting. Could there be girls who just look up to someone who's famous, who makes money and looks really good, and say, oh my God, I want to be like her, and take the wrong message because they're young and vulnerable? Absolutely. You know, was she put on this earth to not do that? No. So I think that the fact that she came from where she came from and she uses her platform to bring women together and bring people like myself and other professors, like Lily Singh was there, you know, just to bring women that people that are great role models who have a positive influence. That's great, you know, but people are going to take what they can. Could the message get lost and girls can be like, that means I can just go sleep around and no one can judge me. That can happen with anything. You have, you know,
I think people are going to do what they're going to do. I think people are going to do what they're going to do. I mean, you know, as far as like, you know, that kind of stuff. But tell me more about Amber Rose. Is she as beautiful on the inside as on the outside? No, okay. Actually, I saw her one time. I was at Delilah in Atlanta. I saw her. I'm like, oh. Anyways,
I don't really find it that
next
attractive.
subject. I do. Let's
really
debate
do?
about that, man. I really do. I think she's very attractive.
Yeah, she is. She seems like she has
She
really
seems
kind
very
energy.
sweet too. She does.
She's a very sweet person, and I just was very thankful that she was able to have something like this that we were able to be a part of. It was really cool. I feel like she could have done a million things with her time and with her platform and with her promotion, and this was a great thing to work with USC and to have, you know, it was open to anyone, really. I think it was like $15 to go, and then the speakers were able to bring some guests. I was able to bring some of my students who loved, you know, going to these different, there was like a sex so I did the financial literacy one, but there was like an entertainment one, there was a sex talk one. So it was just really, it was a really neat little event. And then the next day, everyone, you know, partied.
Were you happy with how you did? Like, were people listening? Because as a speaker, I'm sure when you look at people's faces, at the end of the day, you know if they're really listening or not. Were they into it?
I think that it went really well. I had students who were very real with me, who came and sat in with me. I think it went well because I could have talked about how to keep money and be financial, but what I talked about really was how we can really empower one another when we see a girl. Like, what do we think about her? Even just as a female professor who's young, like, I'm very aware of the fact that right when I enter something, that men will look at me a certain way, women will look at me a certain way, and we're hyper aware of it. Am I wearing too much weight? Am I not? Is my skirt too short? Am I this? And that's stuff that's keeping us down, and that's part of why we might not be representing enough, is the way that we're being seen by others.
Absolutely.
And the way we're participating in. And there were men there too, and I'm like, you need to, you know, not be so much caught up in your boys club. You need to look at a woman and be like, she's going to bring a lot of things to the table.
Which is what you see in regards to a glass ceiling. You see it in pay. You see it in a lot of things that's demonstrated. So we can't even ignore those things. Right?
Nah, we didn't even get into that stuff. I really wanted to talk and I get your opinion and thoughts on that stuff, and you know, learn from you on that avenue. But you know, hopefully you'll come back.
I
next
hope
time
so.
soon. Yeah. We'd love to have you back.
He's gotta like calm down.
No, I think I had a lot of.
Last thing she said was
this week.
Last thing she said was woman in leadership. Like that's a good topic to talk about. It doesn't sound fun, but it's a good topic, I believe.
If I said one sentence, I would say this. So we have issues with fair pay, etc., but the real issue is the fact that we are represented in the workforce just as much as our population is, which is about half the percentage. We are represented. This is gonna be one more than one sentence, but we hold 60% of the undergrad degrees, 60% of the master's degrees, about half of the medical degrees and the law degrees, and we represent ourselves in the workforce. However, when you look at partners, equity partners, CEOs, CFOs, positions in like U.S. Senate, women are very, 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 very limited in these positions of power. Never mind if they're women of color, non-Christian women.
I want to talk about that.
Well, I want to say one thing to that, and you can say one thing about that too. Okay. And I say a part of that reason could potentially be that women are actually a little bit more complex than men, and they don't want those horrible, stupid-ass, time-consuming jobs, and they have a better sense of life. They have a better sense of reality, partially. Now, I'm not saying overall. But I believe that women operate on a deeper level than men do. You know, men, to them, it's just about competing a lot of times at a workplace, and they're just being macho and just keep making money. At what point does making so much money is going to make you happy? There is no correlation between more money, more happiness. And I think that's a realization that sometimes guys fail to realize due to their high ego. But I'm not using this to say that women shouldn't be in the leadership position.
But I don't think women go to law school so they can be law associates for the rest of their lives.
I
I think
think
a lot
for-
of them want to be partners and equity partners, and I've seen it, and I've seen so many studies on it. There are a lot of powers that go into play that makes it so that a mediocre man
Right.
can get that position that this hardworking woman
Right.
doesn't.
And
get.
I don't want what I said to kind of, I don't want to disagree with you, but I'm saying that could be potentially a big
factor.
reason. Yeah. Because as I've gotten older and as I've grown, maybe I would have gone to law school, like say 8 years ago, then 8 years later, I'm going to be like, oh, I've gone, so what the fuck was I doing? I've actually done that in business. I spent my whole life trying to make money. Then I was like, fuck this. Right. So maybe they realize that through growth and just evolving as higher beings, and men still get stuck in that egotistical frame of mind.
And our system doesn't really support women who are like, for me, that people are like, oh, when are you gonna have another kid? I'm like, well, when I can afford pregnancy,
Right.
and not, I don't mean monetarily afford, I mean the fact that I have to be okay with my career being set back for that time it's gonna take, and that's a real fear. For that time it's gonna be for me to be pregnant, have a baby, try to nurse my baby. Now I have to do this and that, and I'm in confined time with my career. Men don't have to do that. They can just like go for a job. If they're about to have a baby on the way, it doesn't show, they're gonna get the job. I'm not gonna show up to an interview 9 months pregnant. Like, I should still go to those interviews.
That's real.
But I get in my own way because I know how it's gonna be perceived.
They even ask you if you want to have a kid.
I did a lot of research on this topic. I really want to get into it. We won't get, but I think in general, partially it's because women do have to make a lot more sacrifices because of family and kids and stuff like that. So that also limits them sometimes. You know what I mean?
Our society's not supporting.
Yeah.
And they're like, sink or swim. If you can't keep up and you have to go take time to have a baby.
Yeah, and which is like the most important thing. You know, it's the next generation. It's so important, like that kid. You know, so I mean that sucks big time. But anything else you want to add, Nooshin?
I guess the final thing I would say is that these conversations are crucial. They're not always easy, and we need to really be able to still take them, because nothing that comes easy is necessarily beneficial for our, the grand scheme of things. My big picture is I want to be like the Dr. Dre of social justice. I don't want to just like be myself who's becoming this person and this activist. I'm creating hopefully hundreds, maybe thousands of people who are going to go out there. Like Dr. Dre, he didn't just give you himself as a rapper. He gave you Eminem. He gave you great beats. He gave you like all these different. We have a ton of amazing hip hop artists because of him. So I want to be like the person.
I'm joking.
I want to be the person. The person who is like I'm the inspirer who like creates students and communities who are going to go out and do this work in the world and our society, and hopefully did a little bit of that today.
Cool, you did. You're awesome. I definitely learned from you about the subject of cultural appropriation, other things we talked about. Next time, I want to kind of talk about your music stuff. I want to talk about
I have a
lot of stuff next time. So yeah.
And I want to thank you as well, despite what may seem on the surface.
No, I liked it. We gotta.
I mean, just getting passionate to the point is me appreciating you in some way. So thank you for that. And I want to say again, I apologize if you felt like, or if I actually did misdirect my energy towards you, and this for the sake of talking about things that matter to me, and I believe that for the listeners. So. You blessed us with your presence. Thank you for your energy. Even through the harshness of the discussion, you still kept it very graceful and beautiful. So thank you for that, and hopefully we can get you back on the show.
I'd love to.
Thank you.
By the way, most of my great relationships, the first 3 months end up being like, or 4 months end up being a lot of arguing and back and forth and like things like that. So
right.
Of course.
We're gonna be long-term friends now.
We will. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Nomads. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time.
I said, put your hands up.
Nomad out.